Well, first of all, we need to point out that what Netanyahu is referring to when he wants a Libya solution is Libya circa 2003. He wants the United States to eliminate Iran's nuclear program as we eliminated Libya's, total capitulation by Libya, etc. Listen to what Kurt Weldon said. There was no talk about weapons of mass destruction or anything. These are two totally separate events. You can't link the two. You can't say this is a continuation. You had a unique set of circumstances in 2011 where Libya was threatening. I mean, the other thing that Weldon mentioned is Sarkozy and the corruption of Sarkozy, where Libyan business were funding Sarkozy's campaign, and they were holding that over Sarkozy as blackmail. There were a whole bunch of complicated issues here that had nothing to do with weapons of mass destruction, everything to do with corruption and politics. What we need to do is get the Yemenis to stop. There needs to be incentives, and right now there's only one: ceasefire in Gaza. That's it, Mr. President. You want to stop the missiles? Ceasefire in Gaza. We had it. The Israelis violated it. You greenlit that violation. We need to go back and put the pressure on Benjamin Netanyahu and put the squeeze on it. Whatever Steve Witkoff did back in November of last year, we need to replicate that today and get the Israelis to stand down. Then the missiles stop, and now we've suddenly solved that problem. It's not there anymore, Mr. President. And then we can focus on how to deal with Gaza. And might be amazed, Mr. President, that if you stop bombing Palestine and actually send humanitarian goods in and create an environment conducive to peaceful outcomes, that we might be able to get Hamas to agree to certain things. Hamas isn't going to agree to anything with bombs dropping on their head. They sort of proved that for 15 months. This was, death by cop. A cop was going to kill you no matter what. It doesn't have to be a gun. All the cop has to say is there is a gun. There didn't have to be genocide. All we had to do is say there is genocide. Today, everybody acknowledges that the genocide thing was just made up. Didn't happen. They can't even assemble we had good reason to believe at the time. They can't even do a whole Iraqi WMD thing. Inspectors weren't on the ground, so we didn't know, so we just believed da-da-da. Nope. We never had any evidence of genocide. We just ran with that so we could bomb them, so we could kill them. And that's what they did. So that's what Netanyahu is trying to talk about, the bending the knee aspect of it, because the last time I checked, there were long lines of people queuing in Israel for food and goods because they have to ration because the economy is fundamentally broken because of what Yemen's doing. But also, Mr. President, I'd like to be able to call up Netanyahu and say, hey, Bibi, I've listened one too many times to your stupid ass video where you talk about how you own America, you bought America, and we work for you. I want to remind you, Bibi, that we don't work for you, that you work for me. You may not know that you work for me, and I'm telling you right now, you work for me. And you're going to do everything I tell you to do, or I'm shutting you down. I've got a list of 5 things here that I'm going to do, I can do overnight, and you're finished. You're politically finished. Your government will collapse, and your nation may not survive. It's not doing too well right now, Bibi, and we can put the pressure on it. We used to be able to talk to the Israelis like that because we own the Israelis. We really do. I mean, this is like a spoiled child telling the parents that they work for him. As long as the parents want to listen to the spoiled child, then it looks like the spoiled child is in charge. Mommy, Daddy, buy me an airplane. Oh, we don't want our baby to cry. We buy him an airplane. But the baby can't buy an airplane. Mommy and Daddy have to buy the airplane. Mommy and Daddy have to do everything. Israel's the baby. It's a spoiled, rotten brat, screaming and pouting. And he's got all the relatives on his side, and the relatives can call up and say, you got to buy the baby an airplane, do the baby. But at the end of the day, the baby can do nothing. If you want Hamas to agree to things, if you want there to be some sort of consensus-driven compromise that has Hamas step aside as the lead and take up a subordinate posture in a joint Palestinian governing body that isn't called Hamas anymore, you do that by encouraging that outcome, by stopping to drop bombs, stopping the Israelis from dropping bombs. That's the solution. And you can't tell me that Trump's afraid to go against Israel, because he made Benjamin Netanyahu sit next to him as he did 2 things. He told Benjamin Netanyahu, we're not bombing Iran for you. And he also told him that you don't get a say over Gaza. At the end of the day, it's my harebrained scheme to depopulate, and it's going to be American land. We do this. You don't get a vote. You're out. And Netanyahu had to sit there with his stupid grin. And what could he do? Nothing. He'll go and he'll have his meeting with Rubio and everybody. He'll try and stab Trump in the back and, all that kind of stuff. But, Trump can go against Netanyahu. It's not as though it's impossible for him to do that. And what's interesting, you have, I'd love to have the Secretary of Treasury tasked with saying what would be required to bring Israel to its knees economically. Now, you could say I'm looking at this from the standpoint, how do we prevent others from making that happen? Because the last time I checked, there were long lines of people queuing in Israel for food and goods because they have to ration because the economy is. No, they're not. Nobody's saying they are. There's no evidence for this. You're just making it up. It's like, cop coming up. I got a Diet Coke in my hand. He said, drop the gun. I don't have a gun. Drop the gun. I don't have a gun. Drop. Kill me, and that's what happened to Libya. They just stop committing genocide. I'm not. Stop committing genocide. But we're not. Stop committing genocide. Bomb, 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 bomb. It was a lie. Everything about it was a lie. Hillary Clinton, again, she belongs in jail. You remember? We came, we saw, he died. Ha 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 ha. The cackle of but she's Secretary of State. You don't just say these things out of the blue. And maybe she does because she's deranged, but there's something there that drove her to that. And Kurt Weldon's right. We wanted him dead. Thought crime. If I'm a foreign student, I wake up in the morning and I have a thought, gee, wouldn't it be nice to have a free and independent Palestine? The Israelis are Zionists. I'd better not articulate that thought in any way, shape, or form. Suddenly I'm a threat to the United States of America, and off I go. I'm done. Thought crime. You're an enemy of America if you speak ill about Israel. How does that work? It's because this is a tactic not about defending Israel, but about controlling America. This is it. This is the mechanism to control the American people. The Constitution's being eroded. Our freedoms are being eroded. Everything's being eroded. And remember, this is the president who signed executive orders. I believe in free speech. I will defend free speech. I will not weaponize. Hell, you just turned the Department of Justice and the State Department into the biggest damn weapon oppressing free speech in the history of the United States of America. And you're ignoring the courts. Separate but equal branches. I mean, if I hear one more person say, well, the courts aren't the president. They're never meant to be the president, you moron. They're meant to be a check and balance to executive power abuse, which is happening right now. And we have a Congress that's just punted. They don't exist anymore. Because Congress is the other thing. Checks and balance requires 2 against 1 so that 1 can't arise. But right now, the Congress is sleeping, and the courts, the president, because it comes down to Andrew Jackson. When the Supreme Court, I think, countered him on the Trail of Tears. He said, good, tell him to enforce it. The Supreme Court can't enforce anything, nothing, squat. So we have a president just telling the Supreme Court to pound sand. Again, they shouldn't be making it up as they go along. This shouldn't be about a speechwriter writing a speech that you're going to give the day before to announce policy. That speech should be actually a product of, well-staffed proposals on what we want to accomplish so that every word in that speech leads to a policy objective that people are ready to act on, that people are pushing for. But instead, everybody's just waiting for the speech. And then he speaks and we go, what does that mean? What does that mean? Because almost as soon as he gives his speech, J.D. Vance gives another speech in Munich. What does that mean? What does that mean? And then Marco Rubio comes out and says some things. And what does that mean? And that's the whole Trump administration. Nobody knows what any of this means. And all you have to do, though, the good news is we won't tolerate it. Go to the Romanians and say, shut the French bases down now. Who has more leverage over Romania, France or America? Ask the Romanians. Who can shut down their economy tomorrow? France or America? So the Romanians will do what we want. We could just tell the Brits and the Romanians, you don't get to operate out of it. Go to the polls and say, you like Fifth Corps where it's at? Then tell the Brits and the French they ain't coming through Poland either. And we could shut the Baltics down immediately, pull all American troops out of the Baltics and tell them that, if you continue to do stupid things, you lack Article 5 protection. I mean, Article 5 is for nations that are acting in conformity with NATO policies. If you're out there doing your unilateral thing, then like Turkey going into Syria, I mean, there's a disconnect between the State Department of Defense, even within internally. Are we providing intelligence support to Ukraine? Are we continuing to ship weapons? Are we continuing to sanction Russia? Because these are different mindsets. If your mindset is how to sanction Russia, then you're not thinking about the economic opportunities that Witkoff talked about. And Kirill Dmitriev is brought in for a specific reason. He's not the security guy. He's not talking about Ukraine. He's talking about post-Ukraine. How the United States will benefit from a relationship with Russia, what the opportunities are for our two nations to work together. And this is important stuff. I mean, he's the advisor. But Ushakov's job's made easier. Again, just to remind everybody, the peace deal is already done, Nima. It's done. It's called the Istanbul Communique. And the Ukrainians already agreed to things in there. They were ready to sign off on that in 2022. All Putin said is that there are new realities. What are those new realities? The 5 territories. Those are the new realities. When Witkoff says we solve the 5 territories, we have a peace deal, it's because the Russians have said, you do that, the peace deal that was on the table ready to go is the one we'll go with. All those details in there. Now, Europe doesn't like that, so they're coming back with some counter proposals and they're complicating the thing. Turkey's a NATO member, went into Syria, Russia bombed them. Turkey didn't get Article 5 protection because that's a non-NATO thing. So just tell the Balts, whatever stupidity you're doing to Russian tankers, that's on you, man. That's on you. NATO ain't going to be there for you. And it's time for us to become large in NATO. What I mean by that is to stand up and say, we own you. We control you. Rutte, sit down and shut up. In fact, Rutte, you're out of here. Let's show our true power. Fire him. Call up NATO and say, Rutte's done. Let's get another person in here because we're the boss. We're the puppet masters. You're the puppets. This is what we need to do if we truly want peace, is bring NATO under control and bring Europe under control and say, no, you don't get to start World War III. But instead, we just go forward and we give contradictory signals. We're either strong, we're weak, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, we're going to do this. And Europe, they feed off of this. I want to remind everybody that Europe did this once before. So if Iran develops more nuclear reactors that require fuel, and Iran's not going to get the fuel from Russia, and instead Iran opts to make its own fuel, then Iran can, size up, and install centrifuges based upon, because nuclear reactors aren't built overnight. So if you sign off on the nuclear reactor, you go to the IAEA and say, okay, at the same time, we're going to be bringing up the following centrifuge halls. We're going to time it so that, the centrifuge halls are here. They're producing the fuel so that when the reactor is ready to be fueled, we have sufficient fuel ready to go in the reactor. So it's all part of a scheme. See, that's appropriately sized nuclear program. I think that is the best Iran can hope for, is an appropriately sized nuclear program. That's so much better than Obama's not one spending centrifuge, by the way. They're gaming the system because they're scared. Because at the end of the day, you can't defend Israel logically. There's no logical defense for genocide. There's no logical defense for Zionism. But what they've done now is they've elevated these crimes so much, and then they said you can't criticize it. That's anti-Semitism. And if you criticize it, you're now anti-American. We've equated Zionism with American values. This is the death of America. Right here in front of us, we're watching America be eviscerated before our very eyes. And it's a travesty, but Israel doesn't control anything. This isn't being done by Israel. This is being done by Americans to control America. And you can't blame it on the Jews. Oh, there's Scott blaming everything on the Jews. No, the majority of the people doing this are evangelical, Christian Zionists. It ain't the Jews doing this. It's Christians doing it. Because at the end of the day, Christians are fully capable of being every bit as fascist and, anti-American as anybody. But this is a very dangerous period in the history of America. It's not about Russia, Ukraine, or Iran, Iran and all that. Hell, we've been in situations where we've almost gone to war before. Again, the entire internet's going crazy right now. Scott Ritter's insane. He's screw you guys. Because if you were right, there wouldn't be negotiations right now. You're wrong. I'm right. There are negotiations because that's the only way out of this. It's the only way out of this, and Iran knows that. But it's up to Trump also to be realistic here. That's why I like Steve Witkoff, because he will be realistic. He will listen. Who could have thought? Could you imagine Joe Biden, anybody in the Biden administration coming back after meeting with the Russians, first of all, even meeting with the Russians, but coming back and saying, hey, Mr. President, Mr. Biden, all we have to do is give the Russians Crimea, Kherson, Zaporizhia, Donetsk, and Lugansk, and everything will be okay. And Biden be going, well, we can't even consider that. That's outrageous. Why are you even bringing it up? Witkoff's realistic. So just the same way, he I think will come back and tell Trump, I can get you a deal that gets it down to 3.65. Europe rode out 4 years of Donald Trump. It's a concerted strategy facilitated by Pompeo, Bolton, and the other deep state guys, but their whole job was to tie Trump up so he couldn't do his thing. That's what Europe's doing right now. This is a repeat of that strategy. This is the tie Trump up strategy. Trump said he learned from the first administration. Well, then where's that knowledge? Where's the knowledge? You got to shut it down, boss, or else the same thing's going to happen. You're going to get so tangled up, not just by the Europeans and the Ukrainians, but by the traitors in your own ranks, the Pompeos, the incompetent people in your ranks, the Hegseths, Waltz, the fact that you surrounded yourself with neoconservatives who don't want anything that you're trying to accomplish.